Finally, let's finish off our talk with front-end performance optimizations with progressive web apps. So, what is a progressive web app? Well, a web app is a website that allows users to interact with the web page in many ways. However, whether it is a game, Twitter, or Facebook, it is inside of a browser window, such as Chrome, Safari, Firefox. A native app, on the other hand, is an app that is on a mobile phone, like an iPhone or a Samsung. That's what native means. It's meant to work on a native platform like a mobile phone. So, do you ever wish that web apps that live inside of browsers behave more like real apps on your phone? Well, progressive web apps are a new technology that's aiming to make that happen. Just like your apps on your phone, we want the user to have similar experience when visiting the web. But first, let's talk about the differences between the two. To create a web app, all you need to know is some HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and you're good to go. To create a native app, that is a mobile phone app, you need to learn a native language, like Java for Android apps, or Objective-C and Swift for iOS apps. Unlike viewing on the browser, native apps have all the files they need on the user's mobile phone. For example, if you go into your phone and go through your apps, you can see how big some of those phone apps are by looking at their file size. And that's because unlike the server-client relationship that a web app has, where it has to go through, request HTML, and finally get the CSS and the JavaScript files, you can download native apps and have them on your phone, the files just living on your phone. The only thing you can really do with a web app is maybe bookmark a website. Additionally, native apps can send you push notifications. They can even work offline. And you're never going to get a blank screen. For example, if we go to GitHub and I have my Wi-Fi turned off, if I refresh the page, well, I get this little dinosaur icon saying there's no internet connection. You've never seen that on a native app, have you? Because native apps are built to work offline. Maybe not have full functionality offline, but still work and not get a blank screen. Finally, with mobile apps or native apps, you can find them to download in places like the App Store or the Google Play Store. You can't really do that with web apps. Oh, and I almost forgot. With native apps, they also have access to the phone hardware, like the camera, geolocation, push notifications. All right, I hope you get the point. Right now, our mobile apps and our web apps are not really the same thing. And mobile apps tend to work nicer than web apps on phones. And this is where progressive web apps come in. You can now make web apps behave like native apps. What do I mean? Well, with progressive web apps, you can make your browser not have that top URL bar so that the entire app covers the screen and looks like a mobile app. You can download them on your phone and have a app icon on your phone home screen. They can work offline. They can send push notifications on your phone. And they also work a lot faster, just like on phones, a lot more than regular web apps because they're designed with mobile in mind. And there are a few other features of progressive web apps, all in a goal to make them as similar as possible to native. So think of progressive web apps as web apps, but they behave more like native apps. Don't worry. It's a lot easier to implement than you think. Like existing web apps, they'll be hosted directly on their associated website. Developers can update them directly on their web server by deploying or updating their GitHub if it's hosted on GitHub pages, without submitting those updates to several different app stores. Because to update an app on the iOS App Store, you have to submit those changes and get those approved by Apple. With a progressive web app, you don't really need to do that. And the best part of all, that same app is going to run on all browser platforms. That is, if the phone is using Safari, it's going to work on Safari, it's going to work on Firefox, it's going to work on Chrome. And you don't have to worry about it being built for Android or iOS, or even Windows. All right, so what's the goal of all of this? Well, obviously, better user experience, faster websites. And we already know how important this is from our previous videos. Many people are really excited about progressive web apps, and although it's fairly new, it's catching on fast. And best of all, with new HTML5 APIs, we're starting to get more and more access to foreign hardware that only native apps used to have. If you go to whatwecando.today website, it shows you what you can do in a web platform when you're building your app. And you see that we can do notifications, we can do audio and video capture, we can do geolocation. So we're starting to get more and more power with our web apps. Now, here's an interesting thing. Who do you think came up with the idea of progressive web apps? Give up? It was Google. Now, who do you think is the slowest in supporting this idea of progressive web apps? Give up? It's Apple. Because the goal is to make web feel like an app. And you can look at the companies and their interest and see why they would have this stance. Google, for example, has a big market share in the web. They're interested in their Chrome browser and their google.com search results to be used as often as possible. While Apple has their closed ecosystem of the App Store. And if you want to build an app, well, you have to build it the way that Apple wants it, using Objective-C or Swift, and using their developer platform Xcode, and submitting to their App Store to have an app. So Apple is interested in keeping their dominance of apps on their phones, while Google is interested in keeping their dominance on the web. And it's always good to think about these things when looking at technologies developed by these big companies. It's often usually out of self-interest. I know that sounds pessimistic, but it is true. Although it benefits us, it's good to understand the overarching goals. Facebook, for example, has something called React Native. And just like we learned React, React Native is a way to build apps that work just like native apps. So using React, you can now build iOS and Android apps, all with pretty much 90% of the code being shared between those two platforms. Anyway, let's get back on track. Now, there's a constant battle with this as Chrome has adopted this progressive web app stance, and Apple, that has the Safari browser, has been really lagging in adopting these technologies. But anyway, this is a constant battle. And as with everything that I've mentioned so far, we don't want to pick a technology just because it's hip and cool and it's the latest craze. We want to make sure that it adds value to our project. Now, progressive web apps are going to evolve over time. But the main takeaway is this. Progressive web apps do enhance the experience of our users, even if it isn't everyone, like people with iOS. If it is easy to implement, then we should consider it though, because adding it to our project even if it helps just a few people, it still is beneficial. And as time progresses, hopefully more and more adoption happens. And this is exactly why Create React App already comes preset with progressive web app capabilities. Yeah, you heard me right. They do it out of the box for you. Once again, Create React App helps out a ton here. With a little few tweaks that I'm going to show you in the upcoming exercises, we can have a progressive web app pretty fast. So I argue that because it is so easy, it's already set up in Create React App, we should implement progressive web apps abilities because it makes the user experience better and definitely improve performance. But how can we make our RoboFriends app into a progressive web app? I mean, remember that's what Bruno asked us to do? Luckily for us, Google has created something called Lighthouse. And this Lighthouse is a plugin, a Chrome plugin that we can just install. You can see it over here. I already have it installed, and run it on any website. And it'll tell us some performance metrics and also how close we are to that progressive web app. And I have here for us our RoboFriends app with Redux already set up. And I have a link to the website because, well, we need an actual URL. So if I click on this, I can go to Lighthouse plugin and say, generate report. And this is going to generate for us different reports. It's going to turn the app offline and then online again to see if it has any offline capabilities. It's going to check if it has any of the features that a progressive web app will have. And we get a report back. And as you can see, it gives us a few extra things like SEO, best practices, accessibility, which we're going to talk about, and also performance. But the number that we're interested in is this progressive web app number. We see that although we haven't done anything, we have 82%. I mean, it's green. That's good, right? If we scroll down to the progressive web app, it even tells you what we can do to fix this. Now, how do we have 82% when we haven't done anything? Well, like I said before, Create React App sets everything for us so that it's easy to implement. And don't worry, we're going to go through this and get this to 100% in our exercise. But for now, that's enough talking for me. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.